Even though I'm going to be having a lot of repeating elements in this headdress, I try and paint everything by hand instead of copying pasting just because it looks more authentic that way. I usually get bored though when I have to paint so many repeating elements, so I tend to jump around a lot. I think for the opposite end of his headdress, I'm going to leave it pretty loose instead of refining the entire painting. Plus it saves a lot of time doing that. I'm just going to speed this part up a little bit since I'm just refining the headdress. This is the tedious part of the character design, having to repeat all these little feathers and little insides. Here I'm just trying out some different decorative designs for his headdress, thinking maybe a bunch of bones, maybe some of the blue. I think the bones are actually a little too much. Maybe there are just too many bones on here. I think I'm going to start over and try and incorporate some of the designs from the bird part of the headdress. And I'm going to speed through this part again. I think my actual painting time for this entire painting was about 8 hours. It's actually pretty common for me to spend 2 or 3 days on a character just because we're required to put so much refinement and detail into each character. So now I'm selecting the entire canvas and copying and pasting it onto a new layer, and I'm actually going to use color dodge on this part. I'm not using the actual color dodge tool. What I'm doing is I'm taking the brush and using that drop down menu on top and selecting that to color dodge. I'm also using an airbrush. I like using this technique instead of the actual color dodge tool because the color dodge tool tends to fade out the colors. But one thing you want to do is when you're using this technique is you want to select a darker color because otherwise you're going to overexpose things very quickly. It's just a great way to make things pop, and it's quick and easy. A lot of people laugh at the idea of using color dodge and burn, but if you know how to use them correctly, I think it can be a real advantage. I think that really applies to any tool you use. If you know how to use it correctly, you can come up with some good things. You just need to know how to be subtle and not overdo it. One thing I never really paid attention to much before I was a concept artist was how armor actually works and fits together with all the other surrounding elements. So now I always try to think of how something is attached to another thing and actually show how things work together. That kind of attention to detail will really set your concept apart from other people because it'll really show that you're thinking about the concept and you actually care about the design. In between these spikes will be a good place to add blue and also add a third color, the red. I also went back and put the red inside the little circles on his headdress. Whenever we're doing these armors, we always had to have a primary tint and a secondary tint. So I usually try and have at least 3 different colors in each armor design. But since this is an NPC, he's actually not going to be tinting his armor, but I still like to try and keep those things in mind.